Welcome to Prime Life. We call it Retirement 2.0. Leave each episode with tips and new ideas to help you navigate retirement in our new age. It's your time. Make it count.
This podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not intended as medical, investment, or financial advice. We do not sponsor or endorse any of the individuals, companies, products, or services featured on this podcast. Any statements or opinions expressed are of the individual who makes them. We hope you enjoy the episode.
Hello, my name is Mary Crean, and welcome to another episode of the Prime Life Podcast. I'm here with two amazing co-hosts, Laura Dardenne. Laura, how are you today?
I am doing well, Mary. I'm excited to be here for today's discussion.
Hey, Joseph, what's up? Joseph Katz.
I am great, Mary. Good to be here. Good to have the whole gang together.
Absolutely. So we have a very interesting guest. So I've known her for many years, and she, as I said before we started recording, is one of my favorite humans in the whole world. But I'm not introducing her today. Laura, I'm going to send it over to you.
Great. Thanks so much. Jeanette's one of those people where if you're around, I would say the city of Hartford, but really it's the state of Connecticut and broader, you've likely met Jeannette. You likely know Jeannette. You're aware of her work. You're aware of the individuals and the businesses that she helps with her talents, time, and treasure. So with that, I am proud to introduce Jeannette Dardenne. She's an entrepreneur who owns multiple businesses. She's a marketing strategist, a business consultant who's very passionate about helping small business and individuals build lasting brands. She's launched an additional service under her PR and marketing business that focuses on helping people amp up their personal brands. So on Prime Life, we've talked with individuals doing this kind of work, but we haven't talked to somebody quite like you. And I'm excited to dive deeper into what it means, for personal branding of oneself, no matter where they are on their personal journey, making their life be Prime Life. Jeannette, jump on in. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, the work that you're doing, and what you've been up to lately.
Thank you for the incredible intro. I'm very excited to be here. I love working. I really love helping people. When I help people, it makes me feel good, and they reward you in so many different ways. I love to learn the stories about what makes people do what they do. And how they continue on. I just recently read a book about happiness and how to find happiness in your work life, and how to transcend it into your personal life. And I feel very fortunate that I have created a career for myself that allows me to not only be surrounded by so many interesting people, but also to help them find their voice.
I'm going to jump right in here because I'm really curious about this, Jeannette. You and I, again, have had conversations most recently, but let's hear it. How do you view aging in relationship to career growth?
I think aging is an amazing thing. When you're young, you're like, getting old? What does that even mean? It's such a scary thing. You think of your parents, but as a parent of two young women, I find aging incredible. You go through different times in your life, right? Maybe you went to college, graduate school, maybe you had your first job. You get to experience a lot of different changes. And I feel that helps you determine what you're interested in, what you like. That's the great thing if you're so fortunate to go into different occupations. And that's something that I've always tried to do with myself. If you look at my resume, you'll see that I've been involved in a lot of different things. And I think that's because I'm curious. I'm interested to learn about different things. I call myself a self-professed nerd. Put something in front of me, I want to learn about it, but secretly I'm strategizing on whether or not I want to go into it.
So in your intro, I think Laura said you amp up people's personal brand. So I love that. I find it funny that there are so many books written about happiness. So obviously there's an issue in our world, right? Where there are tons and tons of books about happiness. But I think what you were just talking about and the evolution and growth and aging, how has your career, you have multiple businesses, evolved as you've aged? And what sort of recommendations do you have for others from your life experience?
So, as I mentioned before, I have two daughters. And from the very beginning of having these two children, I incorporated them into my life. I realized very quickly the amount of time it takes to raise a family. And I didn't want to stop working. Having a professional career, being a active contributor to my family or financial contributor has always been extremely important and necessary. So I have figured out ways to bring my children into my job. And I'm proud of it. Again, I've had corporate jobs and I've also been an entrepreneur. So I've seen both sides of the aisle, and I've done whatever I can to make sure that, my children can easily fit into my career. And I want to recognize that I'm making it sound easy, right? Bring your kids to work or bring your kids into your career. I recognize that it doesn't always work in every field, but I do strongly believe that you have to do what makes you happy and do what makes your life easy. You don't want to overcomplicate things. And I think part of what we struggle as humans is we overcomplicate things. We think about things too much. I just brought my kids in and saw what happened. It either worked or it didn't. Sometimes it definitely didn't. I will say that COVID helped. Now we live in a world where we do a lot through video, and that's made it easy for me. But I bring them into whatever I can, and they're my little helpers now, which is pretty fantastic. So
I love that. As somebody who can remember back to the days my parents worked in insurance, and I remember Aetna specifically, and it was bring your daughter to work day. And we'd get all dressed up in the outfit and we'd go to the Aetna headquarters here in Hartford, and we'd walk around and we'd be in awe about how big their cafeteria was and how many snacks they had. And, they had cartoonists come in and they made it an experience. So, fast forwarding to what you're saying, Jeannette, I have two helpers as well. One I refer to as my director of communications, because she knows when I'm on anything that's being recorded and has to make lots of noise. And then my second helper is figured out. He's more of a strategist at this point and wants to distract me at all costs. But to your point around COVID, it's helped so much, right? And thinking about individuals who work, whether whichever family role they play, and bringing their children or people they care for along for the ride, literally sometimes, quite literally, and other times just kind of bringing them into the mix and exposing them to what's out there. My curiosity for you is, how has this become part of your personal brand, your working brand? Earlier in the conversation, you made a comment around your work life and your business life. Yeah. And we've had guests talk about, it's not about balance. It's about, it's one and the same. It sounds like, though, you may, dissect those two and separate work from business. Can you talk more about your views on that? And then, how do your helpers play a role in your brand?
And we'll get that answer after a brief word from our commercial sponsors.
Nassau is always working harder to be your carrier of choice. We offer insurance products that can help you meet your retirement goals, such as protecting your savings, securing lifetime income, or paying for healthcare costs. We're dedicated to providing best-in-class service and are keeping things simple, and we'll have your back. We have around 400,000 policyholders and contract holders and have been doing this for a long time, 170 years. But we remain humble enough to always try to improve. For more information, visit nfg.com. Nassau insurance products are issued by Nassau Life and Annuity Company of Hartford, Connecticut, Nassau Life Insurance Company, East Greenbush, New York, or Nassau Life Insurance Company of Kansas, Overland Park, Kansas. Subsidiaries of Nassau Financial Group. Products are not available in all areas. Policyholder counts are for all Nassau companies as of September 30th, 2022 and are subject to change?
It's a great question. Thank you, Laura. If you go on my personal Instagram, you'll see that right in the bio, it talks about personal and work life intertwined. And I mean that very seriously. I'll joke quickly that my mom will often say, Jeannette, you got to brush your hair, make sure you look good. Part of my brand, I don't want to say that I'm disheveled. I'm a professional, I do a good job, but I am a mom, and that does bring a lot with it. And I want people to respect me and understand that, even though I'm a marketer and I help with business development, I have a whole other life. And I think that adds value to who I am as an individual. It shows that I'm able to manage a myriad of tasks, unforeseen experiences, driving from here to there. You want to talk about time management, raise 2 teenage girls. I always say crisis management. I know how to manage it all, at the same time, going back to the question of brand, it is my brand. I'm a mom, and I am helping people share, what makes them tick. And it may not be for everyone, as I expressed, but for me, it has worked. And I think there's a lot of people like me. I get a lot of requests all the time. How do I figure out that personal side of me? Do I keep it separate, or do I bring it in? I think it depends on your comfort level, right?
This leads me into how can individuals use their social media, especially LinkedIn, to strengthen their personal brand? Now, I recognize that, again, bringing the young women that you have in your life, and I've seen you on social media, and I know you do have them, not so much on LinkedIn, but on other platforms that you and I are connected on. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that in terms of, as individuals are starting to think about creating a stronger personal brand, or maybe shifting their brand, especially as they get older and they're maybe thinking about embarking on new businesses or opportunities. Can you share a little bit about that?
Social media is an extremely powerful tool if used properly. And I recognize that it's not easy for everyone to go out there and share, we'll call it, what goes on behind the scenes. And again, it's your comfort level. This is part of my brand, so it may not work for everyone else. But I do believe in the power of LinkedIn, for example. It is a real opportunity to, one, engage with people that you may never have access to. I mean, gosh, you can get in touch with, CEO, CIO through LinkedIn, which is unbelievable. And it's where you can share and highlight what other people are doing in their life. It is important to distinguish between the different social media channels, right? LinkedIn is definitely more of a professional outlet. Maybe you can show a behind the scenes family. This is who my little helpers are, so on and so forth. But you do have to remember that it is a professional outlet, and that is an opportunity, like I said, to really highlight who you are as an individual and how you can help others. And by helping others, right, you're supporting them, and they're going to want to bring you into the fold. When you're looking at things like a Facebook or an Instagram or TikTok, even YouTube, those tend to be an opportunity where you can kind of, show a little bit what goes on behind the scenes. But I do feel that, all of these experiences outside of our quote unquote professional life helps to shape who we are as a person. And I do feel that many of those added values make us a stronger person. I was just talking to someone recently, and he works in the restaurant business, but he used to be an engineer. I had no idea, nothing. And I said to him, my gosh, I wish I knew that, because when I'm thinking of opportunities, I may need someone like you. I wish you shared that you're an engineer. He also liked boats. And I thought, gosh, there's got to be a better way for us to show more about ourselves so that we can connect more with other people and show how we can help them.
I love how this conversation has turned into more of a marketing, branding conversation, because this group is all a lot of marketing power here. and this is also timely. I just last night, a friend of mine called to tell me about a former colleague who seems to have gone through a divorce and is using that on his LinkedIn profile. Maybe I haven't looked at it yet, but maybe too much, revealing too much. But I know he's renamed his current job to like stay-at-home dad. So I'm just curious, would you lean in to like retired senior executive, helping X, Y, or Z? Like, would you lean into the retired aspect of your life if that's where you are from on a LinkedIn platform? Or how would you direct someone, maybe that's the way to ask this, who's later in life, maybe retired, close to retirement, and how to kind of jumpstart their social media efforts? Because, I think a lot of these folks may just be hesitant or haven't really engaged.
I always tell people when you're trying to figure out your next step, look at what other people are doing. There's no point in recreating the wheel. I always say, look up someone that you aspire to or someone that you really respect and look at how they're posting, how they're, creating their about section. Look at their resume, what they're sharing and they're not sharing. That's a very easy way to determine, does it work for you? In retirement, what does that really mean today? So many people, quote unquote, retire and then jump into another job. I had former clients and they were in their 70s when they went to like their third professional installment. And I got to say, they opened a winery, they have music, they have food. I think they created a life of their own. They love all of those things. So they thought to themselves, why not just do it as my professional career? Volunteer, right? Is that, you're not getting paid, but does that mean you can't share it on LinkedIn? Are you retired? Are you not retired? It really depends on your definition. Again, LinkedIn is a way to connect with people, so no matter where you are, what stage you are in your life, I think it's an opportunity to go out there and see what happens, to your divorced friend. I mean, you want to be a little careful on what you share, right? You don't want to, you don't want to open too many Pandoras there.
Yeah. You don't want to share any legal secrets, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, maybe he'll connect with individuals and, they'll find a common bond of sorts.
One follow-up point from your earlier comment about the boat enthusiast engineer. I'm always amazed at how people hold back on their profiles. Like, this is just who you are. Like, just dump it in there. Like, I like to bicycle. I like to cycle. So, like, I'm a cyclist. I'm proud of that, right? Like, share that with the world.
When you're going for a job or you're trying to change career, my husband always jokes about how he loves soccer. So he always brings it into the conversation. He works in sales. That's like part of his pitch. He recognizes that other people may go, oh, you love sports too? Oh, you like soccer? And it turns into this relationship. And then people remember it for you. Mary knows this about me. I love having stripes on my pants. It's like part of my branding. I can't tell you how often people now send pictures of pants in stores and say, Jeannette, I was just at the mall and I saw a pair of striped pants. It's just a way to engage, right? It's just a reason to pick up the phone. And that's how opportunities are created.
I love that. And I'm gonna stripe onto that. So I think it's interesting because a lot of the listenership we have are individuals who may be on their third installment. And I like thinking about it as installments, right? So thinking about people in my life who may have classically retired from a corporate job or a professional career and then entered so many of the nets, right? So I've used my mom as an example quite a bit. She's local to the area and she retired after a long career and it lasted about 2 weeks. And then she started to work again, right? So then she worked for a bit and retired again. And now she is actively pursuing her bachelor's. So she's going to college. She's a college student now. She's, doing something. And I think there's a lot of bevs out there, right? Who don't necessarily want to classically retire and sit still like so many people imagine them in the comic strips. They're very active out there. They're volunteering, etc. And, looping it back to the conversation around personal branding and showing up on a platform like LinkedIn and the striped pants, which I love and now I'm going to pay attention to. I think, my question is really around if I want to make a name for myself as an individual, no matter what stage of my journey or installment I'm on, what are some things I can consider to create that brand? I might not be in marketing. I may not have the mindset for it. Maybe I don't look great in striped pants. Like, what can I do as an individual to help stand out at a time where people may feel like they're really just blending in?
There are a couple different ways you could do this. I want to recognize again that not everyone is comfortable with social media, right? So you can do the social media route where you're dropping hints every once in a while. Like I'll do a social media post and I'll be like, did you notice the stripe on my pants? Or did you notice the pic of my kids or something? Like I may like identify something. And I will say that I do always try to tie it back to my profession in some way. I try to tie it back to my love of supporting small businesses. But if you're not comfortable with social media, it's about engaging with your network outside, right? If you're going to an event, if you're supporting an event, if you're going to, office space. I was just speaking with a client a few days ago and she said to me, Jeannette, I want to support small businesses more. How can I do that? I said, well, every time you go somewhere, take a picture and maybe share it with a couple friends if you're not comfortable with sharing it on social media, and let them know, hey, I was there. Or go onto Yelp or Google reviews and just say, hey, I loved that croissant that I just had at your place. I think that shows an initiative, but it is also about your personal brand, right? You're showing that you're a caring person, that you respect others, that you maybe you like food, right? Maybe it's a mall you're going to, maybe it's a pottery place, whatever it is, identify with food. So that's why I was bring food into the mix. But I think there's always ways to share your personal brand. It just has to be whatever your comfort level is. Just like sprinkles, just kind of sprinkle it in every once in a while.
No, I love that. And in your key takeaways, which I actually want to talk a little bit about and have you share what they are, especially the first one. So I'm not going to spoil. I'm going to have you shout that one out because I think for this audience, it's priceless and I really appreciate it. And I think it should be shouted from the rooftops.
Well, thank you. I do agree. And that is that your career does not have an expiration date. There are so many changes and experiences that we go through. And I really do feel that it helps to shape our lives. Some people don't figure out what they want to do until they're in their 50s. I'm in my 40s, and I will say for a long time, I struggled with, what do I want to do when I grow up? Like, what does that look like? And it took me up until my 40s to figure out, wait a second, that common theme is supporting small businesses. But that's not to say that when I'm in my 60s or my 70s, I may say, you know what? I'm now interested in riding horses. I'm not sure what that is. Work can be volunteer. Work can be showing up. Work can be, like I said, taking a picture and just sharing it and showing your love of something. You never have to retire. We got to keep busy now.
Well, I love that comment because I always say to you that I don't plan on retiring. And I've said this on our podcast before. Hopefully my husband won't kill me, but he always says, I'm going to work until they kick me out. And I'm sure that's the case. Now, I don't know. He may change his mind. We'll see. But I do think that, again, it depends on your individual desires and goals and lifestyle. I do believe there are a fair number of individuals that retire and unretire, as Laura alluded to with her mom.
Yeah, I was just to say, I'm at an organization right now. I was just talking to one of the directors. He was in advertising for like 30 years, maybe even 40, quote unquote, retired, started volunteering, made that a profession, and then is now the director of a nonprofit organization. So what a like up and down and all throughout that happy, just looking for new ways to help and support his community. And I don't even think this is the end. I think he'll continue to navigate where he wants to land next.
So we've spoken a lot about personal branding and social media. But if you look at some of these social media, let's call them influencers, because that's the commonly referred to term, it's more self-promotion, right? So how do you differentiate, or where's that line? And I know I personally have struggled with this over the years. I know where I am now, but for our listeners, how do you stop from going from personal branding to just becoming like a bragging, self-promotional, like, hey, look at me, I'm great?
Joseph, that is an excellent question. And I'll say personally, it's something that I struggle with because I never want to appear as if I'm like, oh, I'm so great, because truth be told, I don't feel that way at all. I probably need to work on that a little bit with my therapist, but I think the old marketing term is, 80% value, 20% sales. And I do kind of think about that in the back of my mind. How are you helping? How are you supporting people? If you look at some of the, most successful social media influencers out there, you'll see that they're offering something to their community, whether they're a fashion influencer, they're showing, how to style something. If they're a food influencer, they're showing how to make something. I think as humans, we're naturally curious. We naturally want to learn. We also want to naturally know what's going on, like behind the scenes. What's in your fridge? What does your closet look like? Is your house as messy as mine? Right? Those are all interesting things. And I think we'll call it adds weight to your personal brand. It makes you a more dynamic individual.
I love that. I actually saw something on the socials the other day, and it skirts along the conversation that you and Joseph were just having. And it was a quote that said, surround yourself with winners so your success doesn't sound like bragging.
Yeah.
And it's just a different take, right? So I'm not saying I agree or disagree with the comment, but I think it's an interesting take on the fact that as marketing professionals, as it was pointed out, right, the four of us, we play in the marketing world in different ways. And it is our job to support, whether it's a product, it's a service, it's a person, it's an entity, and just sing their song from the rooftop as loud as we can, as intelligent as we can. But when it comes to oneself, it feels different, right? And I can relate to that, where it feels like, ooh, this is strange. Maybe I'll just keep it to myself. Maybe I've done a thing that I would celebrate the heck out of for my friends or my clients, but I don't need that for me. And I think that's maybe what some people are thinking, looking at myself is like, as a person, I don't need others to celebrate what I'm doing. But it's important as an individual that when you go across your journey, other people are looking at you, whether it's college students, whether it's groups you stand in front of, whether it's opportunities that may open because you're sharing some of the work and the focus you have. I think it's reshifting internally the thought process or one's conversation with yourself to say, I'm not bragging. I'm not doing this to get attention. I'm not doing this to get likes or shares. That might be an outcome of this action. But by sharing this action, not only am I solidifying, value in the work I'm providing, but then also putting it out there as a brick in the ground to say, if there is a little helper, right? Like when my daughter is old enough and she wants to know what mom does for work, mom can look back at certain things and say, look at this, look at that. Here's where the road turned. Here's another brick I laid on my path that didn't go as I thought it was going to go the whole time. There were some daisies and there were definitely some weeds along the way. But I think it's important, right, that we just kind of change our internal mindset around marketing oneself or one's journey. And maybe it's not for you, but maybe it's for others to come.
I 100% agree with everything you're saying, especially when you're talking about the bricks. Our journeys, they are definitely up and down for sure. And are we going to share the moments where we're on the floor, curled in a ball, upset? No, but if we can learn from them and share them in a way that helps other people, I think that's intentional. It's authentic. I think that sharing is really an opportunity to help others. And that's how you should think about it. When you go to a business, when you go to an event, it's not always about like, oh, look, Jeannette or Laura or Mary or Joseph was at the NASA event. No, it's, hey, did you know that NASA throws these kind of cool events? Did you know that NASA is focused on, helping others and this is how they do it? That's the way I think about it. It's not about me. It's about the people that I'm engaged with and what they're doing and how I can share it. I'm so excited to like being on this podcast. I'm like honored, thrilled, excited at people listening and learning about what you guys are doing. That's exciting.
Yeah, I love that. I want to call out a specific word, and authenticity. I read a study earlier this morning, actually, and it was talking about businesses and individuals, the amount of money going into influencer marketing
Oh,
is projected to be down around 50% or greater this year.
mhm.
And it came down to authenticity
Yeah.
and people receiving messages and being able to identify what is authentic, what is not. How do people relate? So when you talk about, is your house as dirty as mine? Girl, if I saw a picture of someone's house and automatically felt like, oh, I'm comfortable, I'm at home, I'm not at a museum, I'm at a true home that's being lived in, loved in, etc. The conversation is going to go very much different than if I'm sitting inside like a cold box, say,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I definitely have socks on my floor. I can't believe that she has no dust on her windows. Her baseboards are clean, for all you millennials out there. And the jokes around baseboard cleaning is the only thing we do before our parents come over. I'm sure Jeanette's baseboards are clean, but it's just that conversation around authenticity. And I think showing up, whether it's the straight pants or in other ways, it's if you're authentically you, people trust you, right?
Yeah. There is a video, and I wish I had saved it. I saw it on YouTube probably within the last 5 years. And it was a woman of power. I believe she was the CEO of a nationally recognized organization. And she was doing this talk. I don't even remember what it was about. But what I do remember is that during her speech, her conversation, she stumbled over her words a few times, which I appreciated as someone who does put themselves out there. I loved that they didn't correct that. They saw that as her speaking out authentically. And that's what I tell a lot of my clients. You know, I did a post recently about just make sure, you know, if you want to just brush your hair, make sure the lighting is good, right? If you want to throw on some lipstick or throw on some glasses, which I always do to cover up those under eye bags, right? You have to do whatever makes you feel comfortable. But at the same time, you want to put something out there. You can let your fears of perfection, of being perfect, get in the way of you doing or sharing. And to Laura's point, I feel that people identify with you more when they see that you're a real human, when they see that you're not perfect, because I am definitely not perfect. And I want people to know that. You know, I make mistakes all the time and I own up to it. And that's what makes me honest.
No, I love that. And I agree. I think it's about being yourself, being authentic, but also showing others that you're not perfect, because really no one is.
Yeah.
So we're getting to the end of our conversation, Jeanette. I feel like we could have you on again and talk a little bit more deeply and about some more things, I believe. So before we go to our final question, if individuals want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
I would say they can email me at Jeannette@ingroupcreative.com, or just, you know, find me on LinkedIn or one of the social media sites. I feel like the great thing about Google is you type in the person's name and like 14 profiles show up. So just send me a direct message.
That's great.
Jeanette, so first of all, for those who are listening to this, I have a virtual background, and that is the reason for that is because this office is anything but perfect. So you have done a lot of things in your career, and you run a couple of businesses and so on and so forth. What gets you up every day? What's your why? Why do you do what you do?
I think part of it is I'm genuinely excited about learning people's stories and finding an opportunity for them. I think Mary and I have had these long conversations about business development and really connecting people, almost like a matchmaker, a business matchmaker. If I could find the perfect job, that's probably what it would be. I absolutely love when I can connect two people and magic happens. And I guess it must be the way I'm wired, but that is part of what gets me up in the morning. This morning, I took a walk with my husband and I felt like I was skipping. I could kind of feel my body just like moving to the beat. And I think part of it was I knew I was going to be meeting with all of you, you know, and I saw that as an opportunity. And I thought, wow, we're going to have this engaging conversation. Who knows where it's going to lead, right? Who knows where the opportunities are? Hopefully I'll sell each of you out an event and we'll hug and remember and say, hey, Laura, I loved what we talked about the podcast. Do you know my friend such and such? And maybe that'll develop in them coming onto the podcast, right? So, I think for me, I get up every morning knowing that there's a connection to be had. And hopefully the end game is an opportunity for those individuals.
I definitely agree with that. And I'm sure we will see you at an event locally, one of us or all of us. And Joseph will have to get you to Connecticut at some point to also do that. Any final thoughts, Joseph, Laura, before we close our show today?
For me, it's a question, Jeannette. If you were to leave our audience with one word to either take action on or remember this conversation on, what would it be?
Engagement. Do your best to engage. It is your livelihood.
Joseph, you have anything?
Well, I'm just going to say it. You've motivated me a little bit today to get back on LinkedIn and do what I was very, very active for a long time. I kind of let it slip. So I have been motivated. So thank you for kicking the butt.
Yeah.
We call it waking the beast.
Yeah, waking the beast. I like seeing Jeannette on social media platforms on several, because I do like seeing what she has on, because we both love fashion. I love her purses. I love her blazers. And we always talk about that. So it's inspiring. So I would say inspiration. For all of our listeners, we thank you. Please follow us, like us, tell your friends about us. And certainly, if you or one of your friends or colleagues think you'd be a great guest on the Prime Life podcast, definitely reach out to us. For everyone, have a great rest of your day. And thank you so much. Jeannette, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Remember to subscribe to the Prime Life podcast anywhere you find podcasts. You can find all of our episodes, contact information, and more on our website, primelifepodcast.com. Stay connected with us. Follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.